I'm going to have a good day today because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me.
What's that from again?
It is a guy named Stuart Smalley. It's an old SNL skit, and I remember it from a long time ago. It's one of those making fun of affirmations and all that stuff.
Yeah, because it can get weird.
It can.
It can get weird when people are like looking in the mirror and look in the mirror and tell yourself you love yourself.
Yeah.
237 times
Yeah,
today.
you have to do it that many times every day.
Yeah. So today we are talking about how we think, which we're not going to go the mystic route, shall we say, the manifesting your truth route.
No.
We're not asking you to look in the mirror and act weird with yourself, but the reality of our everyday life is that how we think not only affects who we are right now and how we see the world, it affects who we're becoming. So it's important. It's something that we want you to have the tools to navigate, and it's something that we're going to dive into on this episode.
This is the Thriving Man Podcast with David and Reese Maxwell. These weekly shows are designed to help you remove the confusion from your life and make real progress with your growth. No matter where you are or where you're going, we're here to help you live a life you can be proud of. So welcome to the Thriving Man Podcast.
So thinking gets weird.
Yeah.
We just discussed that with our intro. The way that a mystic, I guess is how you would call it, sees the world is usually that your thoughts create their own reality, almost as if they are a power in and of themselves that kind of manifest in the universe.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about today. No. And we wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of a, what would you call that? Like a warning or a comfort?
Yeah, it's a lot of people think it feels really good to, I'm going to manifest my future because it's kind of a self-empowerment thing.
Gotcha.
And I think that people are attracted to it because they think I have agency. And we do have a lot of agency in our life.
Right.
But it kind of comes down to who's God. You know, are we God or is God God? And a lot of the people who get into the mysticism and, you know, manifesting your own stuff, they think they're creating their own world.
Yeah.
And it gives them a sense of power that's not real. They may do a lot of things, but you really can't do that. But you do have agency. So there is some truth in it. We all have agency in what we do and how we do it. And I think too often today, we kind of go one extreme or the other. You have the people who are manifesting everything and the people who think, well, it doesn't matter what I do.
Yeah, yeah. And we're discussing, as we talk about thought in general, two elements, how thinking affects who you are today and it affects who you are becoming. The way we would differentiate what we're discussing right now from the kind of the weird train of thought is that our thoughts don't define reality, but they do define our perception of reality.
Yeah.
The way that you see things. I mean, if you can look at two people in the exact same situation, the exact same circumstances, and one can think of it as a blessing and one can think of it as a curse.
Yeah.
That's
they
about
see
perception.
That, yeah. In courtrooms, you have testimonies from people.
Right.
One person says one thing, one person says the other. They both saw the same thing, but they notice different things.
Right.
And we're like that based on our personality, our history, how we were raised, what we tend to do, our experiences. So we kind of see things through our own lens. And we have to be careful of that sometimes.
Yeah, because that can either be a great thing for you or that can be a terrible thing for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have two people in the same garage looking at the same car, and one person's like, man, I'm so glad I got this car.
Yeah.
And one person's like, man, this is trash. I wish I had a real car. This isn't even a real car.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So perception, even though it doesn't affect the car that's in the garage, that car is not going to magically change. It will affect the way that you view it.
Yeah.
And so it's a set of lenses, like our glasses,
Yeah.
that we have to be careful that we trade lenses that hurt us and we take lenses that help us.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is we have to remember that how we think does affect our life. It affects what we do. It affects our relationships. It affects our job, our ability to succeed.
Yes.
A lot of it happens based on our thoughts. So I think a lot of men think if I just work harder, everything will happen. Well, sometimes we just need to think different
Yeah.
for things to happen, for us to become more successful.
No, I think that's an absolute truth. Let's talk about that. The thinking as a roadblock, thinking as like the negative side of it. Do you have any examples from your life where thinking was more of a liability than it was an asset for you?
Yeah, I tended, when I was in junior high, high school, I was an overthinker. And one of the things I did was I overthought sports. I played football. I was a big kid
I understand
at the time, and I was so worried about messing up. That was my biggest fear. And it really kept me from being what I could be. I was ranked in some different things and all this, and I should have been better than I was. But the thing that was hurting me was my own mind. I mean, I didn't understand it at the time, but now as I look back, I see that I just was so don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up,
Yeah.
that I never relaxed and just played and just, did my best because I was so worried. And that really hampered me from being better,
Yeah.
from enjoying it more. And I think it's one of those things that sometimes as men, we have these areas in our life, whether it be relationships or maybe what we do at work. I failed in, 8th grade doing something, and so I'm a failure in life.
Right.
And people approach their life that way based on thoughts, based on a hurt. I mean, I know guys who got hurt in high school and they've just kind of walked away from relationships as a whole because of that. So they kind of see every female out there as, oh, she's out to get me.
And you have a point. Like this isn't just the sports world. This is
Yeah.
real life. Like your
It is.
real life, how you think will transform the way you see everything. I think of maybe, let's look at I'm going to have enough or I'm always going to be poor.
Yeah.
That mentality. A
Yeah.
poor mentality, people call it an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
The I'm always going to be poor mentality will not only color the way you see your current circumstances, it'll affect the way that you act.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, I'm never actually going to have a lot of money. So while I got this paycheck, I might as well enjoy my life.
Yep.
And it feeds the very thing that
Yeah.
that you're already thinking. So
Yeah.
it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It really is. It really is. And a lot of
That can
people,
happen.
when they have that mindset, they don't even realize what they're doing. They don't realize what they're holding themselves back from. Like a lot of times, if you hear people who become very wealthy, businessmen, things like that, they'll sit there and tell you their failures.
Yeah.
Well, at this time I went bankrupt, this time I went bankrupt, and this time I went bankrupt. But then the 4th or 5th time, it worked. Well, what they showed is they kept going because they had an attitude of, I'm just going to keep going and making it.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people, they hit one roadblock and they think, that's it, I failed, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, I'm going to learn and grow from this.
Yeah. It makes me think of like tech with old people versus young people.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times, I don't know if you're younger, you have that grandparent that's thinks that you're just an IT whiz because you know how to unplug and plug back in the computer and turn it back on.
Yeah.
And they're just like, you're just literally, do you have a degree in engineering or something like that?
Yeah.
Like they're just in awe of you.
Yeah.
When really, and I can say this for me personally, how I learned to use tech, especially when I was younger, was just messing around on it.
Yep.
I just opened up the iPhone back when it was new. Golly, that makes
yeah.
me sound old.
I know.
Back when the iPhone was
Back
new.
when the iPhone was new.
But I did. I just opened it and I just started clicking around.
Yeah.
I started going around, looking at stuff. What does this do? What does this do? It was literally just a curiosity thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even look at the manual. I didn't have it all figured out. I was just willing to explore and learn.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes what can hold older people back from learning new technology is they're no longer, like mentally, they aren't willing to explore and learn anymore. They're like, well, this is how I do it now.
Well, and they see it, what they do, you'll hear them a lot of say, well, I can't get that tech. So what they're doing is, again, self-fulfilling prophecy that I can't. And not that I'm not saying it's not going to be harder because if you didn't grow up on the tech, it would be harder to learn brand new tech, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
You can do it. And how we look at things affects everything we do. Like the other night, we went and saw a movie. We went and saw Howl's Moving Castle. For those of you who don't know what it is,
Fantastic film.
fantastic anime, and it was at the theater. So we went to the theater. It's an amazing movie, and seeing it on the big screen, just there's something about it.
Oh, yeah.
But it was interesting because we were talking afterwards because we break down every movie afterwards.
Yeah, that's got to be a series one
yeah,
day.
I
One
know.
day we got to do that for fun.
Yeah, overthinking movies.
Yeah.
It's the Maxwell way. And so, but it was interesting how the girl who's a character, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but a witch puts a curse on her and she becomes an old lady.
Mm-hmm.
But what really happens, and they show you in the story, is it's really how she views herself. She views herself as less.
As ugly.
Yeah. And every time she thinks outside of herself, she gets younger. But when she starts thinking about herself, she gets old again.
Yeah.
And it's a real powerful statement about how you view yourself has a lot to do with how you act.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that if, there are guys out there who see themselves, I'm ugly. No girl would ever want to go out with me.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? No girls want to go out with them. But it's because a lot of times they don't go out. They don't ask. They're not seeking a relationship. And they say, well, I can't find a relationship. Well, are you looking for one?
Right.
What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sitting at home and playing video games. Well, that's not going to bring the babes to you. It's just not.
Yeah.
And I think we have to really look at, is my thinking hurting me more than am I just in a bad situation?
Yeah. And as we talk about thinking as roadblocks, we want you guys to recognize that, your personality and your past, like your experiences, can nudge you in the way of thinking patterns that are not healthy.
Yeah.
However, those things do not define us. We're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But it's not a permanent thing. You don't have to say, well, I'm just negative. That's who I am.
Yeah.
Because you can change. We'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out there for
Yeah.
people who hear maybe one that they identified with. And we're like, well, I guess I'm just terrible. I
Yeah.
guess I should just
Yeah.
give up.
I'm the worst.
Don't do that. Let's talk about thinking as an asset for a second.
Yeah.
What are some ways, what's a good example of thinking that can help you rather than hinder you?
Yeah, I think for a lot of guys, when they get outside of themselves and figure out that I'm not the center of the universe, there's something about that really causes us to just chill and relax. You don't think that everything that happens to you is the most important thing in the world.
Right.
You kind of see yourself in the scope of history that, this is not that big a deal. And what that does is it just helps you to go, okay, let me relax a little bit. Let me chill a little bit. It's not the end of the world. And when you do that, when you think of it that way, it helps you to relax and you actually think clearer. They always talk about people in really rough situations. Well, they stayed calm, and so they made good decisions.
Yep.
Whenever you're in they're training people for crisis situations. Stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. And what happens is when you stay calm, then you can think clearly.
Yeah.
And for men, when they realize it's not all about me, that brings a calmness that I think helps them go, well, let me think about someone else. Let me think about what I can do here. And they make better decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I almost think about the sports world. Because that includes with the sports world. I played tennis. Tennis is a very individual sport.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing bad, you don't have a team to help you.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah.
doing bad.
Yeah.
And you can easily lose in the mental game and think, well, it's over. This
Yeah.
person's multiple games ahead of me. I'm done. But those people that don't give up are the people that are like, just focus on this point.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking too much about the future.
Yeah.
And so it helps them really fight for every point. And a lot of times those are the people that come back and win.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we can think of it through life. You're not the center of the universe. It's not the end. Even losing's not the end.
Yeah.
You're not going to take sports quite as seriously if it's not your life.
Yeah.
Those are all assets. And it develops a hope mentality. And that's where we have to acknowledge hope is not pretending like bad things don't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hope is looking at the negative things that happen as part of the bigger picture.
Yeah. That's true.
Your pain is not the beginning and end of your life. Your failure is not the beginning and end of your life. So like a mindset that's an asset is knowing that.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, they build up more resiliency in their life to where when bad things happen, when things go the wrong way, when you fail. When you have that hope, you build up that resiliency that helps you walk through those situations. And that's why I think we love stories of history of people who just failed miserably, but then came back.
Right.
You know, movies are that way. You know, oh, the main character messed up here, but then years later became this great person.
Rocky Balboa
Yeah,
got
yeah.
destroyed by Mr. T,
Yeah,
but then he
yeah.
came back.
Then he came
and
back.
Didn't give up. Yeah.
Yep. Rocky 3, my favorite.
Fantastic.
And
movie.
but yeah, any of them, we love those underdog stories. And I think it's because there's a part of us that wants to be that person that doesn't quit.
Yeah.
But
Dang, that's
not
deep.
quitting has a lot more to do with your mindset than your circumstances around you.
Not quitting has a lot more to do with your mindset than the circumstances around you. That's so freaking good. That's we got to write that one down. That's its own series.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another good example of a mindset that's an asset. If you realize you don't have to have it figured out,
Yeah.
the way you think is good when you're in the middle of circumstances that you can't understand.
Yeah, and that's a great point because I think as men, we like to solve problems.
Oh yeah, I'm
And
right there.
so we want to have the answers. We want to be, there was an old commercial, the Shell Answer Man, and we want to be that. But there are some times in life you're just not going to know. And the hard part during that is to keep walking and to be willing to say, I have no clue, but I'm going to take another step. You know, I think back for us, when we went through Hurricane Katrina, our house was flooded. We lost everything. And it was one of those people, well, how are you going to rebuild? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? We have no idea because we didn't have flood insurance. And so we were just up a creek. And one of the things that was really great was your mom was really good at, okay, what's the next thing we need to decide?
Yeah.
And really got into, okay, let's not worry about that. Let's just do the next thing. Where are
Yep.
we going to live? How, you know, what about eating? You know, and we just one day at a time, let's answer today's problems. And the next thing we knew, less than a year later, we're back in our house. The house was better than it was before.
Yeah.
And so we didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't know how it was going to happen. But sometimes it started with, well, let's get the house cleaned out. Let's take everything we own and drag it to the road. And in the midst of that, you could be like, man, life, blah, blah, you know, and get all angry. But it's no, let's just get the house cleaned out. Then we'll go from there. And I think that's where a lot of people, they let the situation overwhelm them instead of just saying, what's the next thing? You know, what's the Frozen, was it Frozen 2 where do the next best thing or something like that?
I only watched Frozen 2 once. I don't remember. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I think it's from that, but it's a good attitude to say, okay, I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I can do this. And I think for us as men, instead of trying to solve all the problems all the time, we sometimes need to just say, let me just do the next best thing. Let me do what I need to do in this situation.
Yeah. And if you want to develop thinking like that, a very practical book is The Question Behind the Question. I'm not going to talk too much about it because we're in this thing, you know.
Yeah.
But very good book. Go check it out. The second element, we talked about thinking affects who we are, our world around. But thinking also affects who we are becoming.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit to us.
Well, it's one of those things that how you think not only sets what you do, but it really has a lot to do with your growth. Your thinking sets your growth because if you have an attitude of learning,
Right.
then you're going to grow more and more. So your thinking will affect who you're becoming. But if you think, I can't learn anything, like the technology thing we said earlier.
Right.
You know, people say, oh, I can't learn technology. Guess what? They're not going to learn technology. But if they think, I can do that, I could try that, then I think they'll get to that point where they can do it. And for us, how we think has a lot to do with our ability to grow, our willingness to grow, and our hunger to get that new information or to try something new. And, you know, scientists have shown that as you get older, the more you try new things, you do different things, it's healthy for your brain.
Yeah.
It forces your brain. I've even saw one thing one time where they talked about doing things with your opposite hand sometimes
Yeah.
that you normally do with, you know, like I'm right-handed, but trying to do things left-handed actually does good stuff for your brain. And I mean, I don't remember all the science. I just remember reading that. So for a while, I started brushing my teeth with my left hand. And you got to think about it. Where with the right hand, I can mow my grass and do it because you don't even think about it. You just walk around the house brushing your teeth. But with the left hand, you got to, okay, how am I doing it? What am I doing? And it really does force you to think differently. And I think we have to be willing to work, be willing to push our brains, be willing to push that so we can become someone different.
Yeah. I think it's important to recognize change will happen in your life.
Yeah.
Life is always changing, whether you like it or not. You can try and pretend like it's not, but it is. Culture's changing, people are changing, society's changing, different restaurants, businesses open and close every single year in your town. Everything's changing. And the truth is you are changing. But your thinking affects how you are changing.
Yeah.
Think of it like the rudder on a ship. Like the ship's going to go forward, the tide's carrying it forward, but that rudder defines how it goes forward. So thinking isn't just about getting something. It's about becoming someone. Thinking's not just about what you can obtain, but what you turn into over time. That's why it's such a core fundamental. It's one of the core four that we talk about. Is because if you don't get your thinking right, it's like taking a rudder and putting it in the wrong direction. You're not going to end up where you want to go. Thinking affects how you change. It doesn't do the work for you, but it does channel the work. The principle of neuroplasticity, which is that your brain is changing. They discovered that a few decades ago, and that was a huge development in science because people thought, well, once you're like 20, it's over. But it's not. You can be 70, learning new things, gaining new things. And so who you become is the effect of your thinking compounded over the years.
Yeah, and I think the reason that sometimes you see people who kind of get into the weird, there is, like I said, there's some truth in that in a way you do kind of, as you think, you move in that direction. And so there is a reality to what are you thinking? Are you thinking negative or positive? The old book Napoleon Hill wrote, Think and Grow Rich. You hear the title and you think, you just sit there and think. Well, actually, the book's about doing things. Because as you think, you will do, you will become. So as you start serving people, as you start doing those things, then you start becoming. And that's what we have to understand. It all starts in our mind. How you think, what you think. Like if you go to work with an attitude of, I'm going to give it my best, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to try to bring all of myself to work. Usually those are the people who get promoted, who get the raises. We're the people who are like, these people owe me this check. They're working me. My boss doesn't understand me. I hate my job. Those people don't. Why? Because they're acting what they're thinking. We've all been to the restaurants where you got the person behind the counter who acts like they're doing you a favor, even though they're the ones getting paid to serve. And it's frustrating, but then you go to the ones where the people are actually trying to serve you. Guess which one you're going to go back to? You're going to go back to that one. You're going to go back to the one where the people take care of you. And that's why you hear people talk about, oh, my favorite waiter. When people, like we're big cruise fans, and a lot of the wait staff on cruise ships are phenomenal. And those are half your memories of, the guy took care of me and all that. And you say, well, they're just doing that for a paycheck. We're all doing our jobs for paychecks. We need to get paid. But
your thinking affects how
you do it. How you do it, what you do. And that is, we have to remember that with everything. Your relationships, how you and your children get along, a lot of times has to do with you as a parent and what you're thinking. If you're always thinking, I don't trust my kid's going to rebel, they're the worst, then you're going to act that way. And a lot of times you're going to push your child to become what you think they will be.
Yeah. To put it in like a one sentence version, a difference between like the mysticism and what we're saying is it's about your thinking changing you. It's not about your thinking changing your circumstances for you. And those are very different.
It is.
But when you change, a lot of times your circumstances change. Like we say, success is inside out. That's what that means. It starts inward and works outward.
It does. It's like last month we talked about physical change. Most people who make significant changes when they lose weight and all this, you'll hear them talk and they start talking about what changed in their mind. It manifested physically because they figured out, I don't want to look like this anymore. I'm going to change how I eat, what I do. Something changed inside their mind, and that's what has to happen. And then it became what they started seeing in their mind.
Yeah, and it starts with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why our challenge to you guys today has to do with thinking about your thinking.
Yeah.
I think you said this, Dad, that if you're not thinking about your thinking, you're probably thinking wrong.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we have to take time to reflect on our thinking.
We do.
And the big area that we have been discussing between the two of us that we think our culture really pushes on us, that we have to be careful of,
Yeah.
is this cynicism victim mentality.
Yeah.
It's very common. And it's not really a question of if you have any of that. It's a question of what extent is it
Yeah.
affecting
How much
you.
is it influencing you?
Describe that a little bit for us so the guys can kind of wrap their head around that.
Yeah. For a lot of us out there, the cynicism shows up with attitudes like, everyone's out to get me. My boss hates me, and your boss may hate you, but if you're serving your boss in a good way and you're making them look good, they like people like that.
Right.
And so your attitude has a lot to do with that. Or you have people who, they go to a company, they work in a company, but oh yeah, the CEO of this company, he's greedy. Or our society just hates CEOs in general.
In businesses, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, they're all just in it for the money. Well, what do you go to work for? I mean, we all need money. and a CEO, a lot of people don't even understand what a CEO does and the pressure that's on them. Are some CEOs crooked and rotten? Well, yeah, but so are some plumbers and bakers. Everyone's like that. But what happens is we kind of get this mindset where every CEO is evil, every company is evil. But that's a cynicism. And we have to be careful as men because then we start making excuses. Well, you don't understand my childhood. I had a tough childhood. Well, a lot of people had tough childhoods. But your attitude from that is what's going to happen out of that. What are you going to learn? How are you going to live?
Who are you going to become?
Or we make it like today, I hear more people talk about, well, I'm ADHD. And that may be a reality. But are you self-diagnosing? Or are you just using that as an excuse? I saw a person the other day who they're in a wheelchair and they said, it doesn't stop me from living life.
Yeah,
And I thought that's a great attitude to have. They said, I still go, I still do. Just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean I'm not going to live life.
Yeah.
And I thought, a lot of us are hurting ourselves because we're holding ourselves back with that kind of cynicism about life, about, everyone's out to get me or it never goes my way.
Yeah.
Everything's always going to go wrong. And you hear that and it's like, you're not helping yourself.
It's dangerous because this cynicism, this victim mentality, it places you in a powerless position.
It does.
Now,
really
the nice
does.
thing about it and the reason I think a lot of people go to it is because it's never your fault.
Yeah.
It's never your
true.
fault.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's not me. It's this guy. It's the CEO. It's the person. It's my parent. It's, my issue. It's not me.
Yeah.
It's never been me.
Yeah.
It's never about me. And that's nice to never have to take blame. However, the dark underbelly of that also implies if it's not me, I can never do anything about it.
Yep.
I mean, this is just how I am,
Yeah.
or this is just how the world is, or this is just how life is. Therefore, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to be.
It is. It's shirking responsibility. And one of the biggest things we have to do in our mind is take ownership of ourselves, our attitude. There's a lot of things in life we can't control, but we can control us and what we do.
And that's why we created the Mental Success digital course for you guys. That is a way that you can take advantage of a resource that for a good price, you can really grow in your thought life. Because that's what I think is one of the most important things. I mean, that's why we called it a fundamental. But I would encourage you, go check out that course at thrivingman.com. The reason that we do all of this is so you can experience success mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And we want you to be able to take steps towards that. Our podcast series for this month is going to be on this topic. We're going to dive deeper into it. But if you want something that's very practical, very succinct, and very applicable to your life, the the course is going to be a really good option.
Mm-hmm.
But next week, we're going to be talking about a key for mental success that most people don't think about.
Yeah, it's true.
So anyway, the reason we make all this stuff is so that you guys can succeed in those core 4 fundamentals. We want you to live a life that you can be proud of and that you can live a life that also blesses other people.
Yep.
So we'll see you in the next episode as we discuss that key that most people underestimate. See you in the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Thriving Man podcast. If you want to check out more resources from David and Reese, you can go to thrivingman.com. We'll see you in the next episode.